All right, welcome everybody to our discussion of payment for canceled programs. One of the big issues that comes up through the coronavirus, and there's so many halachic issues that come up, is let's say I, um, I, I have a daycare, I have a school, I have a Pesach program, I have a summer camp, I have a Israel summer program, and I have a dormitory. And I usually charge you, and your child attends this program, or you attend this Pesach program, or you go to this singles weekend, or you go to this Israel experience during the summer, and you pay exorbitant amounts. These are expensive programs. Summer program in Israel could be $6,000. A Pesach program with a family could be $40,000 if you have a large family. It could be $100,000 for a whole week, and then because of the coronavirus, the program is canceled. So you might say, well, why should I pay for a program that's canceled? You're not giving the program. Why should I pay for it? Well, wait a second. Why should you pay for it? I had to hire 50 waiters. I rented the hotel in Boca Raton or whatever it is. I had to order meat for a week for a bunch of hungry Jewish people. That's probably would give me a figure for that. There's another 100,000. I shelled out money. So you tell me that I don't get anything? I run a synagogue. Yes, can provide any services. I don't have any yizkor for you. I don't have any kaddish that I can say for you. You don't have a minyan you can go to. But I have a synagogue, and we still have to pay the gas, light, and water for whatever it is. We have rabbis and cantors and different people we have to pay. We're a school. We have teachers. We're depending on secretaries, maintenance staff. Want us to just fire everybody? So what do you expect us to do? So Lo Alman Yisrael, the Jewish people are never orphaned. Thank God we have great rabbis, and one of them is my good friend Rabbi Chaim Jachter, who has written many wonderful books, Gray Matters, and many others, and tremendous articles. And he's always right on the spot with halachic matters. He and I were actually chavruta years ago, studied together at Shivat Har Etzion at YU, MTA, and he's gone on to really write some tremendous things, and he's just really great friend. And I want to thank him for all the material today, which I've just edited a little bit, put the sources in. He just talks sort of in general. I put some of the sources into this document. I wanted to share with you his analysis of the issue based on Rabbi Herschel Schachter. I just want to call out Rabbi Herschel Schachter. What a community we are, that despite whatever disagreements there may have been with Rabbi Schachter about this, that, and the other thing, every single modern Orthodox rabbi understood that when Rabbi Herschel Schachter and his friend Rabbi Willig and others said that we have to close the synagogues, we closed the synagogues. When they said that life comes first, shut it down, we shut it down, because we understand who the great leaders of our community are, and first and foremost among them, Rabbi Herschel Schachter, Rabbi Mordechai Willig. And when they spoke, we listened, and thank God, hopefully, we saved lives, continue to save lives. You can't document it. You can't prove that somebody who's now walking around happy and everything's great, that they would have died from the coronavirus. It's hard to prove it. But I think it's a clear thing that the communities where we shut down, hopefully we're going to save lives, and we're going to make things better. So I want to thank them for their leadership on this. And here's another issue where they came out and said, you know what? Very simple. You have to make a compromise. You can't just say, well, we have a $40,000 tuition, so you have to pay the $40,000 tuition. On the other hand, you can't say, well, you didn't educate my kids, I'm not paying you anything. We have to make some compromises. But before we get to that, bottom line, we need to look at some sources. Jewish law is always ready for any situation, because that's why you have a 5,000-page Talmud. A 5,000-page Talmud because the Talmud considered every possible scenario, because we want to know, what do you do? What's the will of God in any given situation? So the Talmud always has discussed whatever issue you can think of. They've discussed it. If not, the medieval scholars have discussed it. We have a 2,000-year-old system, which goes back originally to 3,000 years old, to Moshe Rabbeinu. So our system, we believe that our system can deal with any sort of situation. So why did Rabbi Herschel Schachter say that? What does it come from? So we have a Mishnah in Bava Metzia. You know, in the old days they had sharecroppers, right? So, the Talmud can discuss ancient archaic systems, but the same thing applies to your Pesach program here in 2020. So, and there's a locust plague right? That comes and wipes everybody out. So I was supposed to give you 20% of my crops, but what happened? It was a plague of locusts. You expect me to pay you 20% of what? I didn't get any crops. How do you want me to pay 20%? On the other hand, you're a nice guy. You let me work in your field. So and we had a deal. It said I pay 25%. So in Makas Medina, if it's a national crisis, then look, you got to give him a break. If the locust knocked out 90% of the crop, then 90% of the crop, he's off the hook. But im eno Makas Medina, so he says, if it's not a general plague, just happened your field got locusts. Everybody else is fine. So we say, your field got it. Eh? Maybe you were eating too much your lunch out there and you left the crumbs. Maybe you didn't have the right fertilizer. Why did your field get the locusts? Everybody else didn't get locusts. So then maybe say it's your mazel. It's your bad mazel that caused it. Here we get into the word of mazel, and you say, really, mazel, is that a Jewish thing? We wish each other mazel tov, but really, should that be a major factor? But yeah, that's sort of the way rabbis think about it. Now, not everyone agrees. Rabbi Yehuda says, that if you leased it from him for a fixed amount of money, you say, look, I'm not giving you 20% of my crops. I'm leasing this field. My rent payment is $500. Then you owe the $500. After all, so that's interesting. Rabbi Yehuda's position sounds like, if you paid for the program, you paid $20,000 for your Pesach program. You got to pay the $20,000. The Bar Tanura on that Mishnah, based on the Talmudic writings and all that, he says those who say that, look, if it's a national plague, then if it's not a national plague, it's a local locust, then it's your problem for the sharecropper. Why? Damarlo mazach garam. It's your bad luck, Mr. Sharecropper. And then Rabbi Yehuda says, benkach, no matter what, even if it's a national plague, you always have to pay your $500. Why? It's true, God decreed that there's a corona for the whole world. But if you said, not that I'm paying you this 20% of this crop, then the crop, there's no crop because there's locust. But you said I'm paying you $500. Did God say anything about $500? Did God say anything about your money? So on this contract that I will pay you, Joel Finkelstein, will pay landowner $500. There's no corona on that. That's what it says, and that's what you do. You promise $500, you get $500. So now we're going to get into this problem. Later, we're going to look at the question: what if there's a little fine print in my Pesach program that says no matter what happens, you're paying $20,000? So that's an interesting question. We'll get to that later. Now, the Shulchan Aruch, which Code of Jewish Law, which simply follows the Talmud. Of course, it's always hard to know what the bottom line of the Talmud is, so we have to turn to these great rabbis to figure it out. So he says the employer is not entitled to payment if a catastrophic event prevented him from completing the work for which he is hired. If you're hired to perform to work the field, and then there's a catastrophic event, then I don't have to provide you anything. So let's take a look here. So now let's look at the idea of Makat Medina, the idea of a national plague. So he says the Mishnah excuses the hocher, which is like the sharecropper, from payment if the crops were ruined due to a community-wide disaster. Now, the question is, does the halacha even require an employer to pay his workers who are unable to complete their assigned tasks due to a Makat Medina? That's the question. I have people who work in my synagogue. Their job is to sweep the floor after Shalosh Shudas, after the meals, after the Kiddush. They have to dust the sanctuary between services. But there are no services. There's no Shalosh Shudas. There's no Kiddush. So I should pay them to do nothing. So that's the question. Is the Chos's exemption unique, or does it apply to all workers? So he says, well, there's the general rules of what we mentioned, but then there's this particular stipulation that you have. Let's say my contract does not say I will pay the workers of my synagogue for sweeping the floor. So clearly they can't sweep the floor. There's nothing to sweep. But let's say it says that I will pay them no matter what. Let's say it says that. So then what happens? So he says the Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with Rabbi Yehuda that such conditions, generally speaking, are valid in the eyes of Jewish law. Just like Rabbi Yehuda said, that if you have a deal that says, I hereby, Joel Finkelstein, rent this field from Mr. Landlord, and I rent it for him for $500 a month, then that's it. You pay the $500 a month. So if you make a stipulation that you pay for this summer program no matter what, does that work? Or do we say, wait, how can you stipulate against the Torah? You just said that the Talmud says that if there's a Makas Medina, there's a national plague that comes, then you're not responsible. But in the fine print it says, I don't care about national plagues. I don't care about the Mishnah about national plagues. You have to pay no matter what. What comes first, your stipulation, the Tanai, or the Din Torah, the law of the Mishnah? So let's say the contract says that there's a cancellation fee, that even though you don't want to pay a dime, because you say you didn't get any steak, you didn't get your hotel service, you didn't get nothing, but the cancellation fine print says that if it's canceled, if you cancel, you have to pay $5,000. So when I signed it, I think, I'm not canceling, I'm coming out. We think I want to make Pesach, I'm going to go to Florida. Now I look back and I say, what? How did I sign that? What do you mean $5,000? Who gives you the right for $5,000? It was a Makas Medina, it was an international pandemic. So then why should I pay? So let's take a look. So he says, whatever you stipulated, the Shulchan Aruch says, whatever you stipulated, Shulchan Aruch Choshen Mishpat 291, whatever you stipulated, that 17, that's what you've got to do. So if you stipulated, tough luck on you. If you said you'd pay $5,000 if the program was canceled, you have to pay $5,000. You said, but it's not my fault. I didn't cancel. It's not because my Aunt Matilda got sick and I didn't show up. That's you. That's my problem. But here, everybody's canceling. So how can you charge me $5,000? Whatever you stipulated, that's what you have to pay. Is that true? Is that going to be the bottom line? Let's take a look. Then we say, sometimes I sign things, but I don't mean it. The classic case is, I say that I'm going to give you 10% of my crops, whatever I produce. The thing is, im over v'lo avid shalom b'meita. Guy says, are you serious? You want me to make a deal that you're going to give me 5% of your, Rabbi Finkelstein, you're going to do 5% of your crops, you're going to pay me as a rent? I know you. You haven't mowed the lawn in 20 years. You don't work the field. You're going to sit there and do nothing. You're not going to work the crops. 5% of nothing is nothing. You're telling me that you're going to rent this field and you're going to pay me 5%. What if you don't work? So I say, no. If I don't work, I'm going to pay you whatever the going rate is. And not only that, I will pay you the best crops. I'll go to the store and I'm not going to go to the cheap vegetable section where they produce, tomatoes for, a dime a dozen. I'm going to go to the most expensive section of Whole Foods and get the best tomatoes and pay you in those tomatoes. That's what I'm going to do. So he says, in that case, I will do it. So then what happens? There's a Makas Medina. So it says right here, if you don't pay, then you said that you would pay the best tomatoes. You have to give me a ton of the best tomatoes in Memphis, Tennessee. So I say, wait a second. I mean, if that was before Corona, but with Corona, everything changes. After all, everything changes. What do you mean? You wrote in there, stipulated that you'd pay the best tomatoes. So you have to pay the best tomatoes. So that's the question. So let's take a look at this source. Bav Metzia, the Choshen Mishpat 207:12. So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Misha par mixas chovo v'hishlish hashtar v'amar le imlo natati l'cha yom ploni ten lo shtaro." That if I don't pay by a certain time, somebody else has to pay. V'yigias mam lo natan lo yitin hashlish hashtar shezu asmachta. He says sometimes it's just an asmachta. Sometimes if you make a stipulation and it's it's a little bit unreasonable, then he says the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda, who rules that the borrower is not required to pay the $50 penalty in case he didn't pay by the end of the 30 days. If I say, what do you mean? You're not going to lend me $100? If I don't pay by the next Tuesday, I'll pay you an extra $50. He says, that's ridiculous. We don't have usury in Jewish law. Why should you pay $50 for $100? Why'd you pay $150 for a $100 loan? There's no usury. Well, why would you make such a statement? That's ridiculous. That's an exorbitant amount of interest. So therefore, if you make a stipulation that's foolish, then it doesn't count. asmachta. It's something called a little bit of a joke that you make. Sometimes people make stipulations that are a little bit of a joke. And then Rabbi addresses again the issue of in the Mishnah 9:3 in Bava Metzia, this kind of over v'lo avi. If I leave the field barren, then I'll pay for the best tomatoes. So so he says that the Mishnah, though, legitimates an agreement made by the Aris, who sharecropper who pays a fixed percentage of the crops he raises, who agrees to generously compensate the owner of a field if he fails to work the field according to their agreement. So he says the payment's not a penalty. It constitutes an appropriate compensation to the owner of the field for the lost profits. You see, that was, in other words, as I said, you don't want to give me the field for nothing. But since I'm a sharecropper, that's how it usually works. You pay a certain percentage. But the percentage is dangerous because I could be a lazy guy, not produce anything, and then you get nothing. Percentage, 20% of zero, 50% of zero is nothing. So I said, don't worry, I'll always pay you, the best. So therefore, if you make a reasonable thing, it's not a penalty, but it's just a loss of profits, that's different. So if I say to you, if we cancel this program, I'm going to pay you for every cent of meat that you ordered, every fee that you have to pay for the waiters. You're not going to pay the waiters everything because they're not working, so you're going to pay them half. So I'll pay you half to help you cover those hard costs, the meat and the apples and the apple juice and everything that you order. So Shulchan Aruch 207:13 says, any stipulations you make that if this happens, I'll do that. I'm going to do this. I'm going to buy you this house. All these different things. They're really just a asmachta. He doesn't really mean it if this happens. You're always thinking it's like gambling. You're always thinking, well, maybe it won't happen. If I'm a totally lazy bum and nothing, then I'll pay all those things. But I'm not going to be a lazy bum, so I'm not going to pay you anything. So I'm thinking that there's no way I'm going to make this stipulation, and there's no way I'm going to fulfill the stipulation. And then the Haggah, the Ramah says, 3 rules. He says if I say, well, if there's no corona, then I'm going to pay you. Well, I don't control corona, so that would not be a real condition. He says, however, if he exaggerates and he says, I'll pay you $1,000, that's definitely a big joke. He says, if the question of if I'm a lazy bum and I don't do anything, I'll have to pay you the best tomatoes, that's in my hands. So I was serious about that. Obviously, I wasn't thinking I'm going to be a lazy bum. So if there's a reasonable condition, then you have to pay it. So too over here, you might say, reasonable condition. If you ordered steaks and nobody could eat them because there's corona, then I have to pay you for the steaks. But then again, I was saying if there's a corona, well, corona's not in my hands. So I wasn't serious. I was saying, yeah, if there's a national pandemic, last time there was a national pandemic was in 1918. So what? There's not going to be any national pandemic. So if that happens, I'm happy to pay you for your steaks. Yeah, but I didn't expect a pandemic and it wasn't in my hands. So how do we view this? Finally, we have to look at the issue of lifnim mishur and peshara. You see, it's very interesting. When you have a religion that's dictating your laws, it's a little different than if you have a state that's dictating laws. When you have a state, the state, they might be a nice state, they might not be a nice state. But when you have a religion, a God, you have the rabbis who are dictating laws, then it's also a moral system. In other words, I've met Republicans who say, when it comes to my running the government, I am ruthless. It's just about business. There's no handouts for anybody. On a personal level, I'll write a check for $10,000 to give to the local church to feed every poor person in Memphis. 2 different things: religion and there's government. Government is ruthless, and the religion is compassionate. If you have a religious legal system, that's the Choshen Mishpat, 1/4 of the Code of Jewish Law is related to civil matters. It's not something I'm not a judge. I don't personally delve in that so much, other than when I learn Bava Metzia, when I learn different parts of the Talmud that talk about this, or dabble in the show in Choshim Mishpat. But those who are judges, like Rabbi Reese and Rabbi Schechter and Rabbi Willig and other people. So if you're a judge, then much of Jewish law is concentrated on civil law. But it's not civil, it's also religious law. So it's interesting, you have to follow the verse in Deuteronomy 6:18, Vasita yashar be'tov v'nei Hashem, that you have to follow what's good and the right in the eyes of God. And the story comes up in Bava Metzia 83a. It's a wonderful story. Look at this. Some porters, they're carrying wine. They negligently broke a barrel of wine belonging to Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. So you guys were supposed to transport my barrel of wine. A barrel of wine, if a bottle of wine costs $20, picture what if a bottle costs $20, picture what a barrel of good wine costs. I don't know, give me a figure, $1,000. So they broke his $1,000 barrel of wine. So he seized their garments as a form of payment. He found they had a couple of extra suits in the closet. He took their suits. He says, you guys either pay me for that barrel of wine or I'm keeping these Brooks Brothers suits. So they went and complained to Rav. They went to the great rabbi. Rav Bar Bar Chana is a big rabbi, but Rav is bigger. He was the main rabbi in Babylonia. So Rabbah said, Bar Bar Chana, give them back their garments. So Rabbi Bar Bar Chana, who was a great rabbi himself, said, Rabbi, is that the law? Are you serious? I'm supposed to return their garments? If they break something, they have to pay for it. I didn't hire them so they could break my wine and give me nothing. So Rav said, yes, it is the law. So what? You can't prove that. What Mishnah does that? Where does it say that? Where does it say that in the Talmud? There's no way. I've been studying for thousands of years. So he says, there's a verse in Mishlei 2:20. You shall walk in the ways of the good people. You have to go with Darchi Tovim. So he threw a verse at Mishlei at him. It's a soft stuff. In other words, there's hard law above Metzia, Shosh and Mishpat. And then there's, verses in Mishlei that talk about how to be a nice guy. He says, you know why it's the law? Because we're bound not only by the hard laws of something you might imagine is the pure law, but part of the law is the verse in Mishlei that you should go the derech tovim. So, or vasita yashar b'tov v'nei Hashem, you should walk in the eyes of the good and the righteous in God's ways. So he returned the garments. They further claimed to Rav, we are poor men, we worked all day, and we're hungry. We get nothing. So in other words, they were hired to carry the wine. For that, they would get, let's say, $5 a day. Let's say in the olden days. So they were going to get $5, and they go home and they could buy a bottle of beer. They could buy, a loaf of bread and some cottage cheese for $5. So that day, not only did they not transport his wine, but they made him lose $1,000. So he said, as far as $1,000, Rav said, the big chief rabbi said, you get nothing. The head of the yeshiva, he said, you get nothing. You have to, you try to seize their garments. They're poor people. All they had were garments. So you took their garments. You have to give it back. You don't get paid anything for the $1,000 loss. And then they said, well, we're hungry. We don't have anything to eat. We were expecting $5 for our payment at the end of the day. Payment? I should pay you for making me lose $1,000? So Rav said to them, go and pay them. So he says, is that the law, Rav? I never saw that in any of the Talmudic tractates that I read. So Rav said, yes, the same verse keeps the path of the righteous. There's another part of the verse in Mishlei 2:20. You have to keep the ways of the righteous. So it's very relevant because you say, is that the law? I ordered a Pesach program and they didn't give me anything. I paid $10,000 for the dormitory at Yeshiva University, and the kid wasn't in the dormitory. I paid for the meal program, and he didn't get one meal for these 3 months. I have to pay for the 3 months? Where does it say that in the Mishnah? Where does it say that in the Talmud? And the answer is chapter 2, verse 20 in Mishlei. Halachta b'derech tovim. Let's take a look at that verse, 2:20. It says right here, 2:20. It says as follows: Ki yesharim yishkenu aretz. He says, Laman telech b'derech tovim, so that you should walk in the ways of the tovim, the good people. You got to be in the path of the good people. The good people don't say to the NYU dormitory, oh, sorry about that. You're not going to get anything. and then NYU goes down the tube, or YU goes down the tube. The ways of the righteous you should keep. So it says, you want to be with the righteous, or you don't want to be with the righteous. That's what righteous people do. So now the question is, what should we do? So Maram of Rothenburg was one of the greatest rabbis, one of the seminal rabbis of the medieval period, lived around the year 1300, and his great students were the Rosh and the Orzarua, I'm not sure of the Orzarua, but the Mordechai, and from the Rosh, you eventually have the Torah. From the Torah, you have the Shulchan Aruch. So if not for Rami Rothenburg, we would be nowhere. He is the main rabbi of the Ashkenazic community. Unfortunately, he died in jail because he didn't want to pay the Jew tax, the overtaxing that the Gentiles wanted to have for the Jews. They put him in jail, but he was able to be a rabbi from jail. But anyway, so he said the following. He said the employer must, he says, in the case the local ruler forbade the teaching of Torah. So you hired me, Joel Finkelstein, to be the Rabbi for your child. I come in every day. I teach your son Talmud and Chumash and Hebrew for 3 hours a day, and you're going to pay me $15 a day so I could make a living as a Malamed. My father in Hartford, my mother in Rochester, New York, they had these Malamed would pay. So then the government said, you're not allowed to teach Torah. So if I get caught, the KGB is going to arrest me, so I couldn't go teach your children, so I didn't teach them anything. So he says, you have to pay the teacher until the end of the term. Yeah, but it's a Makas Medina. There's a plague in the entire country. You're not allowed to teach Torah. So why am I responsible for that? He says, no. He says, if there's a Makas Medina, you don't have to pay. So the Ramah cites this ruling as authoritative. But there's a question, do you have to pay him full or only half? So there's a big dispute. So let's say you hire someone to water the field, and then there's a river that stops, and you can't water the field because the river stops. It's not your problem. It's not a local problem. It's a national problem. The river is stopped up. So things like that. So the Shach and then the Tivot and the Sma, these are the commentaries on this fancy part of the Code of Jewish Law called the Choshen Mishpat. Again, most laws that we deal with, Pesach, Shabbos, are from Orach Chaim. 1/4 of the Code of Jewish Law. Kosher laws are in Nida laws, Mikvah laws are in the section called Yoredea. Marital laws, ketubas, gets, and marriage are in proper conduct, are in the women's section, the Even Ezer. And we're talking about the Choshen Mishpat. There, they have certain commentators. So the Shach, Sifsei Kohen, so he says that it applies to all workers. It's not just for Rebbes who get this special commentary, all workers. And the Sma vociferously disagrees, and the law should be shared by all parties. So like for instance in the Shach, he said, well, me, we're Shar Poel. He said, the other workers, it's a whole different story. So now some people say even Shar Poel, even in other Poel. So they discuss, does it apply to other Poelim, other workers, or not? The Netivot says that the Netivot says, well, wait, the Rebbe might be different because really a Rebbe can't really charge. How can you charge for teaching a child Torah? But the only thing is, somebody's got to watch the kids. There's a babysitting element, so you have to pay for the babysitting. So he says, well, when the government canceled the program, they only canceled the Torah part, but they didn't cancel the babysitting part. So maybe that's different. So that could be a different type of case. Anyway, Rav Asher Weiss is one of the great rabbis in Israel today. Really an unbelievable rabbi. His name continues to grow. And several of my sons have had a chance to hear him speak in Teaneck and in Israel. He's very generous with his time and shared lectures with us at the RCA. He's a rabbi for the ultra-Orthodox, for the Iran Orthodox. He's really unbelievable. Grew up in America. He said that since Allah has not arrived at a definitive conclusion, we're not sure if it applies to general workers, only to Rebbes. We're not sure. So it's proper that you make a pshara, you make a compromise between the parties. So, for instance, there was a Hamas war. So a lot of these questions came up. I'm supposed to pay for the Kaitana, for the children's program, for a 2-week program, for a summer camp, but there was a Hamas war during the summer of this summer, the other summer. So the camp was canceled. But you ready? So what do we do? He said, make a compromise. And one of the leading Dayanim in Tel Aviv, Rabbi Jacques also says you make a compromise. And Dayan Ben Yaakov this rabbi also said so in the context of the Persian Gulf War in 1991 as well. And Chatam Sofer, who's a great Hungarian rabbi in the 19th century, he says there was a problem of the Pressburg. There was Napoleon invaded Pressburg during the Franco-Austrian War at the turn of the 19th century. Chatam Sofer, in his memoirs, he was in exile for 40 days. So he notes that he is unable to arrive at the defense of halacha, and therefore he says you should make a pshara, a compromise. And therefore, says Rabbi Schachter, the notion of Rabbi Schachter says that you should make a compromise with the hotel owner, with the Pesach program owner, with your local school, with your local shul. Of course, shul we expect you to pay full price, but anyway, just joking. But seriously, with whoever it is, you should always make a compromise in these cases because the law is not clear. Now, but what if the contract specifically says that deposits are not refundable? So you put down $5,000 on your $40,000 vacation, and it says deposits. So you say, "What do you mean? You didn't lose $5,000. You were able to cancel the program. You never ordered any steaks. You didn't lose that much." So Rabbi says, on the one hand, whatever you wrote, whatever you agreed to, it's enforceable. It's not a penalty. It's something you agreed on. But he cites Rabbi Bleich, who's one of my teachers. But then he says maybe it should be valid as long as the damages are reasonably calibrated to the actual loss sustained by the party. In other words, if Yeshiva University is charging for actual real costs that they had, that's reasonable. But if they're just charging an arm and a leg as they want to, that's not reasonable. It's interesting. Rabbi Schachter is very well versed in things that happen at Yeshiva University. He says that at Yeshivat Har Etzion, my yeshiva in Israel, he says Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein, one of the towering scholars of blessed memory from my yeshiva, our yeshiva in Gush, where Rabbi Schachter and I attended this class, he similarly ordered Yeshivat Har Etzion to pay its Arab workers even when they miss work, when they were forbidden to enter Lon Shvut during the Intifada. So the Intifada came, so the government said, "Arab worker, you're dangerous. You can't come into the yeshiva." So the rabbi said, "What do you mean? These people are expecting our payment. How are they supposed to feed their children?" He said, "You pay them. You pay the workers. They'll come back later. Right now, you have to pay them." So it's very interesting. And the Rabbinical Council of Bergen County in 2020 said that we should pay their home help even if you, let's say, you have a maid and you don't want her to come in the house and contaminate the house. So you say you should still pay her. She's a poor woman. She's expecting your payments. How is she going to make her pay her bills? You have to pay her. You should pay her, even if she's not doing anything for you. It's a wonderful thing that Jewish law is so sensitive to the needs of others, to the worker, so sensitive to both sides, to the boss, the worker, to the landowner, and the notion of pshara, the notion of that not everything is a question of what do I have to pay or don't have to pay. Sometimes the answer is we make a pshara, we make a compromise, and that's also part of Jewish law. It's not above and it's not beyond the law. That's part of the law. Is pshara lefnim mishura, to go beyond the law is part of the law. It means to be a Jew is to follow a mishlei. What does it say? It says Laman telech b'derech tovim b'orchet tzadikim tishmor. We want to go in the ways of the good people. We want to follow the paths of the righteous. So thank you for joining us here for our discussion of canceled programs during the COVID virus, and hopefully we won't have to discuss these types of horrific situations in the future. Hopefully in the future we can be discussing more joyous topics, and we look forward to that. So for any other comments, questions, take them at this time, and then we'll conclude.
I just have a comment that Anshei canceled everything in person, but we continue with the Zoom lessons, which have been excellent. So I won't be asking Alan to return any of my dues. And Alan, you don't have to
paid for
return
by Alan Golkin.
The Zoom lessons have been excellent.
And I have witnesses. Thank you.
Okay. So of course that's why we had this session, to make sure everyone pays their dues, and it's why Alan was listening very carefully.
Right.
But,
Also, the JCC told me that I had the option of suspending my dues, or not my dues, but my membership. So
Because that's what's so interesting, right? On the one hand, we have to be sensitive to an organization like the JCC. Say, wait, they have to pay their workers. That hopefully they're paying their workers, not firing people right and left. Hopefully, if that's what they're doing, then it's understandable. They should certainly have overhead costs. So they have to be sensitive. We have to be sensitive, and we all compromise with each other. That's when things will work best.
I'm on a daily call with the other agency heads here in Memphis, and interestingly, since the JCC made that policy available to people, almost no one has taken them up on it. In fact, they said that their dues collection has been excellent.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I mean, I really like the
notice the psychology of that.
Well, I like the employees at the JCC, and I want them to, I feel for those who are affected. Thankfully, I can keep working, but I know a lot of people cannot. So,
yeah.
Are the trainers affected? The trainers in the gym, they just work by.
Yeah, isn't that a private relationship? Like,
Right.
I have a trainer. Yeah, so
Right,
I guess it depends on each person.
So they're
how
not.
compassionate they want to be with the trainer.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, you mean to like, yeah. I didn't think about that.
I think where they've been able to shift things online, they've done it, but it's not possible with everything. And so, yeah, and the JCC does have a lot of part-time staff that I'm sure has been affected by this.
But notice the psychology of that idea. You send a letter that says, we care about you. If you're having trouble paying, we're not going to demand that. And then people come back and they say, we're nice people. We want to go b'derech tovim. We want to go in the ways of the nice people. We'll help you out. Had the JCC said, look, we don't care. It says in the fine print that no matter what, this is unrefundable. Once you are, then people start saying, oh yeah, you want to be legalistic? We're all in this together. We want to help you. So I think very often the other party, responds in kind and says, oh, you're willing to waive it for me. You know what? I'm going to send you an extra $1,000 this month because I know you're probably hurting because some people are dropping their dues. I'll pay for them. So I think it's very much in the spirit of the JCC move, is very much in the spirit of that compromise that was spoken of it. And, good policy is good psychology also. Or good psychology is good policy, good law.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thanks so much, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Very
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good day, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.